My brother was a complete jerk and misogynist. He never, ever respected women at all, including mom and me. He treated all of his girlfriends like shit, and I constantly caught him cheating on them, no matter how nice the girls were. It frustrated me to no end. I thought that someone had to teach him a lesson, and I realized that no one would be able to do it but me. Let me tell you a bit how I came to decide my brother was going to get his comeuppance. And yeah, I know maybe I went too far by adding female hormone pills to his food, but hear out my story before judging me. I think you might have ended up doing the same thing. So, my childhood was kinda messed up. Mom and Dad argued all the time. Sam was my older brother, and he was never protective or even nice toward me. When I was scared, listening to my parents yelling at each other downstairs, I tried to go into Sam's room. Sam? I asked, knocking timidly with a soft whisper. I was so young, and I remember clinging to my teddy bear tightly. Sam, let me in. No, go away, brat, he replied, without even bothering to open the door. Come on, please, I'm scared, I said. But he didn't really care. Once, he crossed the line and actually pushed me back to my room. When I was climbing into bed, thinking he'd stay there to talk to me, he instead said, Mom and Dad are getting a divorce, so stop being so silly and get over it. And then he just closed the door behind him and left. I couldn't believe my older brother would be so cruel and cold toward me. It was as if he didn't even care. He didn't mind Mom and Dad were going to separate either. Well, he ended up being right. Mom and Dad did get a divorce, and it was a pretty nasty one. We were dragged to court over and over, and their lawyers were really, really mean. They fought over custody and accused each other of the nastiest stuff. My brother just played with his Game Boy and seemed unaffected by everything that was going on. I bet you wonder where he got to think so little of girls and women. Well, that would be my dad. He called my mom terrible names. And when I would spend the weekend with my father, he would always have nasty things to say about women he worked with or even my own mother. I don't like you talking that way, I told him one day when I was older. He rolled his eyes and laughed at me. Women are so sensitive, Dad mocked me. And Sam laughed along with him. Yeah, it's like all they do is cry, Sam added. I was so offended. I argued with them, but it was really hard getting through to them. They really believed women were too emotional and they never acted rationally. Sam seemed to believe that girls were inferior to him. So the tension reached a boiling point when I turned 16 and Sam was 18. He was a total loser. And he didn't even apply for college. My brother didn't work, he didn't study, he didn't do a thing. My dad gave him a weekly allowance to do whatever he wanted without ever making an effort himself. Mom was super annoyed by this, but he rebelled against her all the time. Dad gave me that money and I can waste it on whatever I like, Sam said when Mom scolded him. If you aren't working, at least you should try applying for college. Mom tried to convince him, but there was no way to get him to cave. Dad says I don't need to study. I can go to work with him next year if I want to, he replied, always dismissing my mom's opinion simply because she was a woman. I hated that and felt my mother deserved far more respect, especially coming from her own son. But she never knew how to put her foot down when it came to Sam. By then, I was already determined to teach him a lesson, but hadn't quite decided what to do to him. But then, one day, the unthinkable happened. I was taking a nice, hot shower after cheerleading practice when I heard a strange noise. Opening my eyes, I turned toward the door and noticed Sam was peeking at me. I screamed like a banshee and grabbed a towel at once. Running towards the door, I opened it furiously. Sam was pretending to be simply walking by as if he hadn't been staring at me. You pervert? What were you doing spying on me? I asked. And he just shrugged nonchalantly. I wasn't doing anything of the sort. Don't be so hysterical. I was just walking to my room, he replied. You are such a liar. I saw you peeking in, I accused him, but he kept on denying it. I talked to my mom and dad about it, but it was the typical case of he said, she said. Oh well, that was it. Sam was going to suffer. The very next day, I got together with my best friend. Sarah was the daughter of a prominent doctor who specialized in gender change treatments. She knew all about my brother's messed up attitude, but when I told her about the shower incident, she was furious. Oh, I can't believe that creep, she screamed in anger, and I agreed with her. So I told Sarah about my plan. I was going to put female hormone pills into my brother's food in order to teach him a lesson. The thing was, I needed help. Do you think you can get the pills for me? I asked. She immediately agreed to steal a small stash from her mom every few weeks. You don't want to give him too much, or he'll realize something is happening at once. Through time, though, this will really change his body, and maybe even his personality, Sarah explained. In order to avoid anyone from catching me red-handed, whenever I got a new bag filled with pills, I would ground them up and place them in a small jar. Every single morning, I'd drop a small amount onto his breakfast, and then also onto his dinner plate. Every single day, every single night, for months and months and months. And believe me, my plan worked so well. At first, nothing seemed to change, but after a few weeks, Sam's features began changing. His face was a bit more feminine, and soon he couldn't even grow a beard. Then his hair began growing really fast. The best part was when he began developing female parts on his chest. Well, those were small, but definitely there. My brother thought he was getting chubby. He was so ashamed of it, and I found it hilarious since he had always been so vain. He went to my dad, completely freaking out. He took Sam to the doctor, who ran some tests. Yeah, they noticed the estrogen levels were a bit elevated, but couldn't understand why. So they decided to put him on some meds. And you know what I did? I changed them up for the female hormone pills I had instead. So he was taking them on his own accord, thinking it was the solution to his problem. That made the whole process even more amusing to me. I know, this was super messed up. But my brother was really a nasty jerk. The good part about this whole mess was that Sam did get a bit more sensitive. He's not as cruel and misogynistic any longer. And since Dad is ashamed to be around him, he isn't there to be a bad influence on my brother. All his girlfriends ended up dumping him, and he seemed really heartbroken about it. He finally seemed to understand how much it hurt to be judged by his looks. It seemed my brother was learning lessons all around. I was so surprised when he actually asked my mom for some advice. He had never, ever done that at all. My mom was so pleased, and I knew that was the moment to stop. Sam had suffered enough, and he seemed to have unwittingly learned his lesson. I asked Sarah how I should do it since I imagined that making him go cold turkey without the pills would be harmful. Little by little, I added less and less of the powder to his food. Over time, many of his problems seemed to fade away. He didn't understand how, but was clearly so relieved. He's become a far nicer person since then, though. I mean, my brother will never be my favorite person, but at least he's not a woman-hating jerk any longer. That's good enough for me. A few weeks back, believe it or not, he actually knocked on my door and asked if he could talk to me about something. Sure, what's up? I asked him, and he looked really uncomfortable, but finally said, I wanted to apologize for peeking at you while you were showering and then lying to Mom and Dad. I know it was a messed up thing to do, and it must have been so frustrating for you. I was being a jerk, and I'm sorry. I was stunned, not only to hear him admit it, but also apologize for acting that way. I smiled at him and nodded. I forgive you, I said. How could I not? After all, I had drugged him for an entire year. I think that we might be even now. Sam has actually been dating a really nice girl for a few weeks now, and I haven't seen him sneaking around with anyone else so far. Maybe my brother has finally matured after all. Thanks for watching. What's the worst thing you've done to get revenge on someone else? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and check out other videos on our channel.